Good afternoon, everyone. I know we're hitting the home stretch of the con, but you know what? We saved the best for last, okay? Welcome to the Dave Johnson Q&A panel. Our guest today is a true talent of the... that is right. Look, Henry and Marka, I'm going to need you guys to clap and applaud for all...
For like 10,000 people.
10,000 seats in here, okay? So let me try that one more time. Good afternoon, everyone. There we go.
Yeah.
All right, look, I know we're hitting the home
That
stretch.
sounded like all of 10 people.
Dave, here's the best part. The video is one view. They'll never see the back
Oh, that's
view, all right?
cool.
This is a theater of the mind is what we're doing.
All right, fair enough.
All right, folks, welcome to the Dave Johnson Q&A panel. Our guest today is a true talent of the comic industry. He's an Eisner Award-winning comic cover artist and a man whose work has defined the look of modern superhero and comic cover design for over 2 decades. From his legendary 100-issue run on 100 Bullets to his Eisner Award-winning work on Detective Comics, as well as Superman Red Sun. His Billboard philosophy has changed the way that we look at comic book covers. He was a cornerstone at the legendary Gaijin Studios and even helped shape a generation of animation as a lead designer on Ben 10. Please join me in welcoming Dave the Reverend Johnson to Collective Con. Let's give it up for Dave. Yeah, super loud. All right, there we go. Dave, welcome to Collective Con, man.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Dave, before we dive into the deep stuff, you've been referred to, like I said in the intro, as the Reverend in this industry for a long time. For the folks who might not be in the know, what is the origin of that story, and what the hell are you preaching about?
Well, Dave Johnson's such a boring name, and back when I was at Gaijin Studios, there was a guy who was looking to do something nefarious. Long story on that one, but he told me about this thing called the Universal Life Church, which you could send off a self-addressed stamped envelope and $10, and it would put you in their roles as a reverend. So if you wanted to start your own religion, they believed that there shouldn't be a gatekeeper against starting your own religion. So I just thought, why not? And, also I was a fan of Reverend Horton Heat, and I just loved how it rolled off the tongue. So I just started calling myself Reverend Dave Johnson,
Dave, that was a better answer than I thought it was going to be. All right.
But I have
Reverend.
legally performed 3 different marriages. So
Come on, now let's get.
And one of them was Darwin Cook's.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to a true legend right there.
He is sorely missed.
Absolutely. Dave, I want to start also with something very current. I think that it might be safe to say this is your latest comic book project. For the folks at home, I'm holding up a copy of the new Superman Spider-Man special. I'm holding up the Dave Johnson cover, which features Red Sun Superman versus Spider-Hulk. Dave, if you don't mind, I guess... If you don't mind giving us the play-by-play breakdown on how this cover came about, who reached out to you? Did you get any starter ideas? How did this come together?
DC reached out and they asked me if I wanted to do one. Of course, I said yes because any idiot would say yes to such a easy thing to do. And they gave me a list of they specifically wanted Superman Red Sun. But then they gave me a whole list of Spider-Man-esque characters. And I said, how ridiculous is a Spider-Hulk? It's the craziest idea ever. And
you're like, sign me up for 10.
Yeah, and originally I wanted to make it into kind of like a Soviet propaganda poster that would say fight in Russian along the bottom. And they were like... well, people will get confused if it, they'll be like, they won't know what it is. And I'm like, what? And so I came up with a compromise, which was I put it like a building thing on the background. So, but yeah, it says fight in Russian, which doesn't make any sense. But then again, the whole cover doesn't make any sense, so.
On the topic of Superman Red Sun, this is a character that came to fruition in, I think, 2003 when you teamed up with Mark Millar to do the Superman story. And I'm curious, when you were tasked initially with putting a hammer and sickle on Superman's chest for Red Sun, was there ever a moment of like, oh man, I hope the internet does not tear me apart about this? Or did you just like lean into the chaos of a totally different look for Superman?
In Russian, S is a C, and that, you know, that didn't look very cool, you know. And actually, I don't know how many people know this, but Stalin actually means man of steel. You know, curiously enough, that wasn't his real name. But it just seemed to make sense to put the hammer and sickle, because Superman in this story isn't as much of an individual as he is whatever he's doing is doing for the state of Russia. So it made sense that he wouldn't have a personalized thing on his chest. It would be more of a propaganda tool for Russia. And originally I thought, well, you know, the Cold War had just about ended at that point, but I was worried that people would be upset by making Superman a Russian. I mean, you know, it's not as bad as making him a Nazi, but it seemed to work out, and people seemed to like. I've met so many people that weren't fans of Superman, but they seem to have like gravitated towards, you know, our version of that, you know, story. So,
you know, I am curious. Why did that project warrant you being able to do or doing the interiors? Because I mean, most people know you for, I mean, so many different cover work. I think it's safe to say you could probably count on, you know, maybe two hands how many times you've actually done an interior work for an extended project. What was it about like Superman Red Sun that?
I mean, before I became mainly a cover artist, I was doing interiors. I did my own series for DC called Chain Gang War. I did 2 different miniseries for Eric Larson called Super Patriot.
That's right.
And this was the next thing. And, you know, when they offered it to me, I was like, hell yeah, it's got propaganda. It's Russia. You know, that would be a lot of fun. And I discovered at that point, working on it, that I'd rather do one cover at a time than a whole series. So that's why I never finished it, because I just burned out. So, and then after that, I also went into animation, and you know, did that for like 15 years. So.
Oh wow. Sorry, I just taking that in right there, but.
Sorry to confuse you.
No. No, that was plenty good. I guess I would like to, because you mentioned editorial had a say in what characters they wanted on the cover. How often are you? I guess how often are you getting like input from editorial? Or are you at a point in your career where, you know, editors or creative teams are kind of trusting your vision, you know, based on, you know, your, you know, the work that you've done?
Well, I mean, you know, you always have to work with the editor, because they know what they're looking for. But yeah, luckily, you know, you'll have some editor who'd be like, "Hey, can you give me like 5 concepts?" And I'm like, "No, like I don't have time for that. You're not paying enough for me to do 5 different versions of a cover." And I learned early on that if you give an editor too many choices, they inevitably always pick the worst idea. So I just approach it and I say, I've thought about 100 ideas in my head, but I went with the one that I think I can pull off the best, and I think it would be the best version of that cover. And they usually, and I say, hey, if you don't like it after I draw it out, I'll be happy to do you something else. But, you know, I you know, once again, they don't really pay enough, and it, you know, hey, if I screw a cover up, I've got next month to do a better job. So.
You don't have to say any names, but I am curious, have you ever had any just wild or outlandish, whatever, crazy, whatever adjective you want to use, input or ask from an editor that maybe worked out better than you expected?
Nothing that I can think of. I did do a Batman cover where it was all bat silhouettes and all the info was inside the bat silhouettes. And originally DC liked it so much that they sent it down to the production, and they were going to make a die cut of it, which I was like, okay, I didn't design it to be a die cut, but sure. But then a couple of days later, they came back to me and said, yeah, the die cut's not really going to be feasible. Can you do us a new design? And I'm like, well, no, this design is good. Like, I didn't want it to be a die cut in the first place. So, and they were like, oh, yeah, I guess you're right. So that was kind of funny.
Yeah. Dave, I also came, doing my research online, I came across a couple of quotes where you've compared comic book covers to billboards, where they, a single image that really needs to sell the content of the book and, be attention grabbing, etc. I'd like to know from you, what makes for a good comic cover? Like, what are some of the elements that you feel need to be prioritized to make a good comic cover that meets that kind of billboard philosophy of yours?
Well, yeah, I mean, if you think about what a good billboard is, it needs to be identified, read, and absorbed within 10 seconds or less to be effective. And back when I started doing these kind of covers, there wasn't a whole lot of design work in them. And I learned early on that sometimes the simpler the cover, the easier it is to pick up and understand when you're in a sea of color on the stands. And so that kind of started informing my design philosophy to make sure the cover was readable, and simple enough that you would be able to go, oh, I understand what that cover is. A lot of covers are way too busy. There's way too many characters. It becomes a sea of color, and it makes it harder. That's why I try to usually stay away from team books, because they want all the characters on there, and it just becomes a mishmash of too much information. So I'm much more of a simpler cover design guy.
I think if you were to ask me prior to the panel, what comes to mind when I think of a Dave Johnson cover, I think I would have told you it's either going to look like a movie poster or a propaganda poster or a classic kind of graphic design illustration. And I guess I would like to know, because I have a feeling that, the energy that I get from your artwork is that you're pulling from much more than just like comic artists.
Oh yeah.
What is in your studio? Like, what do you have on? What are you listening to? Like that's non-comic. Like, where are you pulling inspiration from that isn't just in the comic realm?
Well, once again, when I started absorbing other styles of art and other genres of art, it became like, I call it like a big pot of gumbo, where I was just adding ingredients constantly. And I didn't go to school for design.
Real quick, specifically, what is in this gumbo? Like, what is in the pot?
Well, books on propaganda art, books on paperback novel art, album cover art, just standard illustrator art from the 30s on. And you can pull references from anything, and I think a lot of comic book artists, they only look at comic books, or anime or something like that. It becomes kind of, you should be pulling influences from everywhere. And I love kind of pushing comic art into other areas, and now there's so many people that are doing so many different and unique things. It's kind of hard to stand out anymore. Hopefully I'm not. I look at a lot of old guys from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s that were kind of house style guys. Guys like Herb Trimpe and Don Heck. And then when the style taste changed, they were pretty much out on the street, when Jim Lee and those guys came along. So I always try to keep it in the back of my head to never be stagnant on one style or one particular way of doing things. because you can get stagnant and I call it the McDonald's effect. If the reason McDonald's is so popular or became popular was no matter where you went, if a different state, you knew exactly what that burger was going to be like, and I think that becomes a comfort food to people who look at art, But if that style completely goes out of favor, then you're kind of screwed, And I remember Herb Trimpe tried to do Rob Liefeld stuff at the end of his career just to fit in, and it was like, that's kind of sad, So now everything's hyper rendered and stuff is looking more and more AI looking, with all and even if it's not AI, but there's so many tools now and programs that enable you to go more hyper realistic rendering and stuff. But, that's just not my style. I'd rather just do something fun and interesting and, so maybe there might be a time where the phone stops ringing for me. I don't know. So
I'm glad you brought up tools, because I'd be curious to know how often are you getting your hands quote unquote dirty with physical media versus maybe preferring the speed of digital tools and digital art. I guess what is that balance like for you?
I personally don't like drawing on a tablet or a Cintiq, but I tend to do all my work traditionally on the black and white side, the ink style. But the coloring is way easier in Photoshop. So, when I first started, other people were coloring my stuff and I usually hated it, or they, never got it the way I wanted it to be. So I had to learn how to color my own stuff, and I've been doing it ever since. So.
What's one thing that you absolutely need to have in your studio, whether it be like a tool or something like maybe personal, like maybe something that you're like finding yourself constantly restocking? Like if you could buy a lifetime supply of one thing for the studio.
There was a Japanese pen that I think I've got like 300 of them at this point, which is good because they discontinued them. So I was like, thankfully there was a Japanese pen and they just stopped making them recently. So
I feel like you're probably very precious and probably very precise when you use those.
No, you gotta use them and abuse them. Otherwise they're kind of pointless to have. So eventually I will run out and I'll just have to find something else to replace it. But maybe I'll be dead at that point. I figured, maybe 12 a year, that'll last me to the rest of my life,
Dave, I think you got much longer than 12 pens a year.
You don't know me. I'm a hard-living man, so.
Yeah. Dave, what's your first comic memory? Like, do you remember the first comic you ever read or was given, or the one that, like, really inspired you, like, I want to do this full time?
The ones that really got me into comics, I mean, I remember buying them as a kid, but then my mom made me throw them all away, and I didn't buy them for a while. And then I started buying Micronauts toys right before Star Wars came out. And I was really into Micronauts. And then one day I was at the local drugstore, and there was a Micronauts number 4 or 5 on the stands. And I was like, what? There's a comic book about my favorite toy, and it was drawn by Mike Golden, and I became an instant fan of his. And that led me to discover John Byrne. And so it was like Mike Golden and John Byrne. And then I would go to comic book stores, and I would find boxes under the main boxes, and there would be all the 70s underground comics and like comics like Metal Hurlant and Heavy Metal, which as a young man, I mean, that really blew my mind. And that, once again, it was kind of like it started pushing me down a road of not being just a traditional comic book fan, but I was being influenced by all these other, genres and stuff.
Yeah.
And then at some point I discovered manga and like books like Appleseed and Akira.
Good stuff.
And that also influenced everything. And once again, I just kept putting stuff in the pot of gumbo and just mixing it up and seeing what came out. So
You brought up heavy metal, and you made me think about the first time I found my dad's box of heavy metal magazines. I was wondering why he kept it separate from his other comic collection, and he told me don't go in that box again. Dave, when did you know that you made it? Like that, hey, I've arrived. This is a legit career path for me. Like, was it the release of a book? Was it the cosign from a peer? Was it, a fan interaction? I guess, when did you really feel like, okay, I'm in this now, this comic industry?
have I made it? I don't know. I'm still.
By show of hands, who thinks Dave Johnson has absolutely made it in the comic industry? Come on, man. All 100,000 of them in the.
It's been a good career. I can't complain. The first time I remember, my first gig at DC was a fill-in issue of The Web, which was a horrible comic. And, seeing that in my hands, it's like, whoa, I'm official. It wasn't a good book. It wasn't my best artwork.
What's the one that you're most proud of, would you say? I know it's a long list to think through, but like what immediately comes to mind? Like, man, that's the one that not only did you feel like a sense of like, oh wow, I'm here, but also I put my best foot forward.
The 100 Bullets, that was 12 years, of my life, doing, a cover every month for 12 years. And then you had the trade paperback covers, and it just kept going. I was really proud of that. And, designing Ben 10, which, that's a bittersweet one because I'm proud of what I co-created. But, seeing that it's gone on for as long as it's gone on, using my designs and I think last I saw it's made over $8 billion. Which is bigger than some of the Marvel stuff, and I get zip. So, I was on the second season and the toys started coming out, and which were all my designs. I didn't have any help from the creators, quote unquote, of the show. And I asked the producer, I said, hey, these toys, can I get a set? And he goes, yeah, Target's right down the street if you want to go buy some. And I was like, are you shitting me? Like, you can't even give me a set of these toys? And, between that and the guy that was right above me, he was a giant asshole. So I left, so,
Dave, I'm sorry you had to go through that, man. I know comics is a hard industry for artists. It's the whole history of it is, rich with unfortunate,
I'm in good company. I'm in good company.
Yeah.
You
but
look
you don't
at Stan Lee and even the guy who actually created Mickey Mouse. He didn't get to own it. So, it is what it is.
You brought up Ben 10, and I will say that is a cartoon I vividly remember kind of growing up watching through the eyes of my little brothers and just enjoying it myself. And I think it's safe to say, present company included, up until now, that many fans that grew up with Ben 10, probably didn't realize that, you designed all those original aliens.
I know, yeah. They always think the Men of Action did it, and I was like, no, they really didn't. It was I designed the whole show. So
what would you say is the biggest difference between designing a character for a 22-minute cartoon versus a single comic book cover that's static images?
I don't think there is a difference, really. With designing for animation, you got to make sure that it can be animated. You can't make it too complicated, but you can say the same thing about a comic book. Because somebody's going to have to draw it 22 pages every month. So, I did a series of silk covers, and awesome. The initial design had way too many webs all over her. And I was like, oh my God, what a nightmare, And I asked if I was going to do the series covers, if I could redesign the costume, and I did, and seemed to have worked out. People seem to like it. So, So there really isn't much of a difference. You know, you just can't make it too complicated.
Yeah.
I know the new Absolute Poison Ivy costume looks like a freaking nightmare. I wouldn't want to draw that with a gun to my head. It's like I would never be able to do a book. It would never get finished. I would be drawing that costume for way too much. You know, no, hell no.
You know, on the topic of modern art, I think I had a chance to talk to you before we did the panel. That I've been in a few interviews where your name has been brought up, and great stories. People have had great things to say about you.
All lies, all lies.
I mean, I did pay them, but when you think about maybe the modern landscape of comics, maybe just in general in art, what are some artists, creators that you're looking out for that you think other people would enjoy? If they're like, hey, I like Dave Johnson, who else should I be on the lookout for?
I mean,
you co-sign?
I've said this online a bunch, but Gigi Cavanago is one of the guys that just blows me away. He started it over in Europe doing Dylan Dog stuff, and he is, he did the Order of the Magic, the Mark Millar book, and he did that. I don't know if you saw Love, Death, and Robots. He did. Was it How Zeke Got Religion? He won an Emmy for it. And, I mean, that guy is just a beast. But there's so many good artists now. It's really it's humbling and exciting all at the same time. But old classic guys like I said, Mike Golden, and he still can bring it. He's always been amazing, and Kirby and Mobius, and I could go on and on and on. And
Okay.
I mean, one of the greatest things about being a comic artist and getting into the business is you get to meet the heroes that you grew up looking at and enjoying and having their feedback. Like I met Jim Steranko. The first time I met Jim Steranko, I was worried that because people were referring to me as like the new Jim Steranko as far as like how designy my stuff was. And when I finally got to meet him, I was worried that he'd be pissed off that people were even referring to me as him, and he was like, he kept a file on me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it blew my
That's
mind,
awesome. That's been a big honor.
Now I'm really good friends with Howard Chaykin, and we get together for lunch like usually about once a month with guys like Bill Sienkiewicz and Mark Chiarello, and just a bunch of old guys that all live in Los Angeles, and we try to invite other people along for the ride every once in a while. And that to me is a big thrill. I kind of wish I'd met some of the older guys before they'd, ultimately passed, just to see if they give me a thumbs up or not. Like, am I doing okay, sir?
On the topic of that, one of those names that that had a lot of great things to say about you is the writer Doug Wagner, and he spoke real fondly about the Gaijin studio days. I mentioned in the intro that that included people like you, Cully Hamner, Adam Hughes, Brian Stelfreeze,
Jason Pearson, Tony Harris, Joe Phillips, like Carl Story,
a murderer's row of just insanely talented artists. What is the most prevalent memory you have of that time? And did you ever have I guess I'm thinking like Adam Hughes, Brian Stelfreeze, all these like great like artists around. Like, how often were you guys trading notes and like getting lessons and doing critiques? Like, does anything stand out from that time?
Well, I mean, when I joined Gaijin, I wasn't published yet. And actually, Brian Stelfreeze didn't even want me into the studio because he didn't want a studio full of wannabes.
Wow.
He wanted, guys who were actually working. And but they gave me a grace period to see if I could, make it. And I was like a dry sponge when I joined that studio, and I just soaked up as much of, what they could teach me as I could. And I learned about storytelling. I learned about, just every aspect of comics, just osmosis, looking at what they were doing and how they were doing it and their philosophy and stuff. It was a great learning experience that, I basically got for free, except for, paying rent, because we were all paying rent towards the collective whole. And it was great. We were super slow. We would always get distracted, talking about stuff and playing hacky sack. And I mean, we were known for not making, deadlines very well. But, it all worked out for just about everybody. So, but yeah, it was a great experience. And I was in there for about 2.5 years. So.
Wow. I want to get back to 100 Bullets, because it's definitely, when I think of Dave Johnson, I definitely go to 100 Bullets. I mean, it's insanely impressive, right? Like that series, I think, ran from 1999 to 2009. Brian Azzarello, Eduardo Riso doing the story and the interiors, and you did all of the covers. I mean, 100 plus covers. What was it like trying to maintain the visual identity for that long? And at any point, did you feel, I guess, like, did you develop shortcuts? Did you develop like a signature that you leaned on to make that experience easy? I mean, what was that like, building that visual identity for 100 Bullets, which I think, is one of the best looking books, still to this day?
It, when we started, I had full script. I had the art that was drawn and inked. And so that made it easy because I could see what the book was. But, because we have to do things so far in advance for previews and catalog, it got to the point where I was just getting pencils. And then it got to the point where the pencils weren't even done yet, but it was a full script. And then it got to the point where Brian hadn't even started writing it yet, and I had to come up with a cover. So I would have these conversations with Brian. I'm like, dude, what do I put on the cover? And luckily, about that time, the whole series had been developed, and a lot of the characters had been developed. And so that's why, if you look at the whole run of the covers, they're very character heavy at the beginning and story, at the beginning, and then they become more suggestive because I didn't want to put anything on the cover that wasn't going to be in the book. So I started relying more on the iconography of the trust hand and just kind of give you an impression of what might happen. But that actually led to some really cool covers. Not every cover to be successful has to have all the elements of the story on the cover. It just kind of has to evoke an emotion. And once again, it kind of worked out. I mean, there was a case where the story takes place in Miami, and I had the idea of an image of like when somebody's floating in water at night in a pool and the light is inside the pool, it kind of creates a dark shadow on the back that's not in the water. And I wanted to do that. And I was like, and I told Brian, I want to draw somebody who's been knifed in the back, laying in the pool, and the blood coming down the water, and you see a face in the blood. And I said, you can do that in the story, right? Kill somebody. And he goes, yeah. And then he didn't. And I was like, oh man, it's gonna make me, you
made me a liar.
Damn it, Brian.
Yeah.
And towards the end of the run, I said, look, before you end this story, somebody has to die in a pool, so it makes it look like I was a genius, and we gave you a preview of what was going to happen. And he did.
That's awesome.
So it all worked out. So
that's awesome. I got one more question. I would like to open it up to the audience. If anyone has a question or would like to think of one, I'm gonna give you guys time, and then you guys can ask it to Dave himself. But Dave, I'm hearing you say that you get input from editorial, every now and then. It sounds like at least 100 Bullets case that you got the full script, the full pages. Is there ever been a script that has really moved you, like that left an impression on you? That I don't know whatever feelings came to that. But is there a particular script that comes to mind that you got that you were like, man, this is amazing stuff, and then channeled it into the cover or whatever the project was?
I mean, most of the time now, I don't even get scripts. The with all the variant covers, they just want something with the characters, and I'm like, come on, you got to give me a little bit more than that. But that's why so many variant covers are just basically pinups. They don't really do a whole lot other than, hey, here are my boobs or here's my muscles, kind of a thing. But it's funny. I was a fan of 100 Bullets, and because of the way I had to, I had to do stuff so far in advance. By the time the book came out, I was reading it like everybody else.
Cool.
And there was so many. I remember there was a New Orleans storyline where this trumpet player ended up falling into a bear trap, and he took his bottom lip off. And so no more trumpet player for that guy. And it was a brutal story.
Huh.
And I have a fond memory of that one because Eduardo made me a character in that story.
Oh, the biggest honor.
And I was a real asshole in the book. So that was kind of funny.
A hard living man, huh?
Yeah, it's funny. I've been in quite a few books. I was in a Darwin Cook Get Carter
that's
book.
Cool.
Or was it
Parker?
Yeah, Parker. Sorry,
yeah.
That's what I meant. I get killed with a shotgun. Jimmy Palmiotti put me in a Harlequin book. Me and Dan Panosian were on a beach wearing Speedos. It was kind of ridiculous.
If your friends don't take advantage of making fun of you in a comic, what type of friends are they?
Yeah, of course. I do it all the time myself. So
awesome. All right, I've got plenty more questions, but I would like to open up. Does anyone in the audience have a question they'd like to ask Dave Johnson?
Nope.
Okay, well, look, I'm going to take it that you guys are enjoying the flow of the show.
All right.
Okay. Oh, good. Well, I'm doing a good job.
Yeah,
then.
he's doing a really good job.
Okay. Well, then, Dave, with 4 minutes left, hopefully I can get off these last two questions. But
Sure.
You've been in the industry,
30 plus years.
30 plus years. So you've seen a lot of it change. You've seen trends come and go, et cetera, et cetera. But on the topic of a cover artist, I guess. How has the role of a cover artist changed in today's day and age of comics compared to when you first came in? Has it changed any, if any?
Well, I think it's changed with all the variant covers, and
how do you feel about that trend?
Hey, it's kept me in kept me in my apartment. That's for sure. Because once again, the competitions. There's so much competition now. Like when I started, it wasn't anywhere near as flooded with talent. I mean, I even when I'm doing a variant that is just a pinup cover, I try to make it somewhat interesting, beyond just a guy standing there, beautifully drawn. It's whatever floats people's boats, I always look at variant covers as almost like a choose your own adventure.
Yeah.
You don't have to go with the standard cover. So once again, it's kept the lights on for me. So I can't really complain.
And I guess to go back to my original question, I mean, do you feel like the role of the cover artist has changed dramatically or much since?
No, you're still trying to get butts and seats. You're still trying to get somebody to pick the book up, and if you do a good job, then hopefully it helps sell the book. So
Okay. All right, I got one last question for you. This one is a white whale what if kind of question. Is there a specific character or like a specific universe or world in comics that you haven't had the chance to touch, but you've got maybe like a killer design for the back of your head, in the back of your head that you're like, just the minute they give me this opportunity, I already know what I want to do.
You know, it's funny. I grew up a total Marvel zombie, but yet I've actually done way more work for DC.
Yeah.
You know, Batman's always fun, but at the same time, Batman is how many different ways? I mean, you know, I've almost kind of exceeded my ability to do something new, you know, and that's one of my things that kind of drives me a little crazy. It's hard for me to just rest on my laurels and kind of do the same old, you know, and you know, Batman's one of those characters, like, there's been a million versions within that, and it's hard to come up with something new and interesting, you know. Personally, I'd like to do more Nick Fury. I don't know why I'm drawn to that, you know, like, I just think he's the coolest character ever, and you know, I've had a lot of fun drawing them, so you know, I don't know, you know, it's whatever comes next, you know.
Yeah.
I'm looking for new challenges, and it's, as long as it's the character has a good design, I can usually have some fun with it.
I'm sure we've all heard of comfort food, but is there a such thing as like comfort art? Like, do you ever find yourself just drawing one particular thing, character, whatever it may be, just to I don't know, just for the hell of it?
You know, you know, you get to a point where I feel like a sausage maker, and the last thing I want to do is go home and eat a sausage. You know, so if I'm doing anything for myself, it's not comics. It's something completely different.
How do you separate? Like, what do you do to separate from drawing and comics? Like, do you have another hobby or something that you're also really into?
Right now, I kind of don't. I got into costume making briefly.
Oh, wow.
I made a samurai armor out of Rubbermaid garbage can material because I wasn't cool enough to use all the new stuff.
I hope you have a picture of this because I want to see it after.
Oh
this.
yeah, no, I got them.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
it turned out way better than it should have. That's for
cool.
sure. And it could take a licking. I mean, it's actually sitting on a mannequin along with a Superman samurai outfit.
Wow.
In Mark Brooks's man cave, because I didn't have any room to bring it out to LA with me. So, and we actually wore it for Dragon Con one year. It was crazy. So, but yeah, it was just fun making it, you know, so.
That's awesome. Well, look, if you ever have any more a superhero themed samurai outfits that you need help storing, I've got a whole storage unit. One last question to wrap us up. Dave, what are you currently working on? What can people expect from you in the future?
Well, the Pop Kill hardback just came out, and that's been a fun ride.
For those that don't know, what is Pop Kill about?
Pop Kill is basically what if Coke and Pepsi really hated each other, and to the point where they would hire saboteurs and assassins to go after, you know, each one. And the story is about a woman who worked for one of the companies, and she was on the verge of creating a formula that would make soda fizzier 50% longer. And the other side finds out about it. They activate their best James Bondian kind of guy to either seduce her and bring her over, but if you can't do that, then to kill her, because they'd rather nobody have this formula than their competition. But once he meets her, he comes up with a third option, which is they take, you know, what she's about to create and try to sell it, and then that enrages Coke and Pepsi, and they try to kill both of them, and it's a shoot 'em up kind of thing, and it sold really well, and people seem to really love it. And so now we're doing a sequel where those same two characters now run afoul of the candy industry. So it's called Pop Kill Big Candy. So, and it's full of the craziest characters you could ever want to meet. So it's just a goofy little fun book that I had an idea for it years and years and years ago, and now it's out there and done, and I'm writing it with Jimmy Palmiotti, and it's just been a blast. So
That sounds awesome. And to everyone in the audience, you can actually check it out. He's got a copy of the book at his table. Highly recommend you guys stop by. But Dave, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for giving us a peek behind the curtains.
Thanks for all the 5 people that have showed up.
Let's give it up for yourselves. Let's give it up for Dave Johnson. You guys have been great.